Great. So this is the fourth AWS live learning session. And today we've got Josh Peake from Deloitte's AWS team joining us to talk about data, AI, and machine learning. So I'll hand over to you, Josh, and you can share your screen whenever you're ready.
So I'm just going to set all of it up. Problem is it wants to do a presenter view, and that means I'll lose you guys.
Yeah, see how you go.
Switch that. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the chat for you as well. So if there are any questions from anyone, we can pop them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on those, and that will leave you free to present, Josh.
Okay. So I'm Josh Peake. I work in the data and AI offering within Deloitte, doing consulting services. I've been doing consulting for about 2 years, but I've been working with AWS since 2012. So I've been working with AWS stuff for quite a while. My first job out of uni was for a startup doing an invoicing app when iPads were launched. So I was sort of right when we were shifting a heap of stuff from we were hosting it ourselves to doing that initial cloud migration when that really took off. And then from there, I'm like, oh, hey, data. Like everything has data. So I just became the data guy in that company and just like forged a career from there.
Who doesn't love data?
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere,
and I
man.
seem to wind up landing in a lot of like financial services sort of situations. So I guess that invoicing sort of background, I learned a lot of stuff in that sort of sector. So I wound up with a lot of like banks and insurance agencies because it's like I did an accounting course. I didn't know the lingo about profit and loss statements and fixed assets and depreciation schedules. So they're like, you speak our language, coming over.
Nice. Nice.
So, I mean, it's boring for like a dinner party conversation, but I mean, it pays the bills and there's a ton of data there.
I feel like it's something people will get more and more interested in, but anyway.
Let's hope so. So jumping ahead a bit. I've got 3 of the AWS specialties, certifications. So I've got the machine learning specialty, the data analytics specialty, and the security specialty. So between cloud practitioner and the specialties, there are the associate level certifications. So this is more of the 10,000 foot version of data and analytics and machine learning services of what you could do. So think of it as like what's being presented today are just concepts, like Lego bricks, things that are available on how you could solve a problem. You don't need to know the details of how to use it. And to be honest, in the work that I do, I very rarely get under the hood into the nitty-gritty details. A lot of the data science and machine learning, that's solved by really smart people. I mean, I'm pretty smart, but there's people even smarter than me that they've done it.
I was going to say, is that not you? I thought that was you. That's you to me.
Thanks. But
right, okay, so you're not elbows deep in this stuff necessarily.
Yeah. Like once it's a solved problem, it's not the actual work that we're doing day to day. Most of it is data cleaning. So it's like that's domain knowledge. So that's where most of the work is. How do we get the right data to feed into these systems? And then once you've got these systems, then each of these are solving a business problem. So I think that's the main thing that you want to get out of the cloud practitioner. What business problems are already solved problems with technology? And how can we possibly piece that together for business use cases?
Yep, makes sense.
So I've stolen a lot of the content from the Udemy, the Stefan Marek's course. So if you've already gone ahead, this is the summary of the things in the syllabus which will be examined. And there's a lot of services. I haven't formatted this very well, totally sorry. I've tried to at least break them down as to what they're roughly doing. So SageMaker is a general purpose machine learning platform. I've got about 3 slides that I'll go over with that. The rest of these are machine learning as a service. It's fully hosted. You don't have to worry about the details. As long as you understand what input am I putting into the system and what thing am I getting out, that's the main thing to take away from this. So that's the summary slide if you
for the
want to go back and
purposes
review.
of cloud practitioner, that's what you take away. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So if I'm, I think one of the key things with the cloud practitioner is you're cloud literate. You're having these conversations where it's like, hold on, no, I know what that thing can and can't do. Have I actually used it? No, but high level, I know what it can and can't do. So,
and that's
how
the
those
level
things
that
fit
you
in.
need to be at for cloud practitioner, right? Is to
Exactly.
know kind of what are the use cases, what would you use to do that, how, like, what do you put in, what do you get out? You don't necessarily have to know how to put it in and how to get it out.
Yeah, and you could, with just enough knowledge like that, conceptually piece together an architecture of what could be a possible problem, and then go get someone a bit more technical to verify that it can actually be done. Forward. So
Awesome.
the groupings are around essentially like the types of media of data that we're consuming. So video and image. So being able to detect things in image data is the Amazon recognition service. Within the audio space, I've kind of very loosely categorized these audio ones because it's like transcribe. A lot of, I think even on these calls now, Teams calls, you'll see it's record and transcription. So the audio stream that's coming through, we've got text, which is pretty cool because now in things like SharePoint, if I'm searching for something, it's got text indexed against a video as to who said what. And because each person is dialed in individually, they know, all right, it was this person on the call. So Josh has said these things, which is pretty cool that they're able to actually do that.
Yeah, that is amazing, isn't it? And so, and it's been moving so fast. Like that was not possible, however many years ago.
There is a use case I want to get to later, just anecdotally, that chains a lot of these together. And it's like, that's fascinating on how, once you know what the building blocks are, how you put them together and they start leveraging, and it's like that cascading business value, which is what I love about this.
That's very cool.
So Poly, text to audio. So if you've got like a chat bot or something that's synthesizing, here is a response, but it's on a phone call, or if you've got like the Amazon Alexa, where you say, hey, blah, blah, and then it's talking back to you. Poly is what's under the hood to say, well, here's the text that it's generating, and it's just creating those audio files to have that voice interaction back. Or if you're on a call center call and you're through those auto prompts, that's often what's generating that audio. So that's Poly.
Okay.
So there are some tutorials if you wanted to have a play around. I think it could take you like a day or two, and then less than like $2 if you want to spin up your own AWS account. Follow the tutorial where you go, I say something, puts it into text, and then it spits it back out in a computer generated voice.
Oh,
that could be a fun project just to sort of get a feel
cool.
for it.
Yeah.
So Connect is contact center stuff. And this is where they're piecing a lot of this stuff together. So the fun use case I wanted to bring up, as you're on a call, the customer support representative, as the customer, you're describing the problem, they're doing transcribe. So they've got those transcriptions coming through. And then that stream of text that's coming through, they use later on Kendra to do like a search of the knowledge base to find out of the FAQ articles, what's the most relevant to what has already been spoken. So the customer support agent already has the most relevant FAQs at their fingertips as you're describing the problem. That's pretty cool.
That's amazing and terrifying,
so that's where
but
I'm
amazing.
Chaining all that stuff together is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So Connect is their service to sort of hook in and start doing some of these things in the call center, but it's as a cloud service. I probably shouldn't go over these in too much detail because there are slides on each of them in a bit more detail. I'll cover the There's way more in the text natural language stuff. We'll get into detail of that later.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the 3 high-level services that don't quite fit into the above sections. Forecast is more like time series, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
Are there any questions from people on the call at this point?
I think we're good. The chat is good, so you can keep going.
Scrolling through. So I'm going to go into SageMaker. So you don't need to understand everything on this slide. It's a wall of text. I get that. This is taken from the machine learning specialty training. So when you get your specialty certification, you need to understand what 80% of these are at a high level. So where now at the Cloud Practitioner, you need to understand what SageMaker is, just back up a bit. What is it at a high level? For the specialty, you need to understand all these dot points at a high level.
Mm-hmm. This
is mostly to show you that SageMaker is a platform. There's a lot of pieces to it. They've sectioned it off. So each of these services are only like these 4 main categories where it's like, I'm preparing data, I'm building a machine learning model, polishing it up, adding the new data to say, hey, tweak it to a better model, what we're trying to get out, and all the lovely DevOpsy, like deploy it. Because if you're a data scientist, oh, cool machine learning model. How do I get it off my laptop and into the cloud? Like there's a whole section on how to get it into the cloud, keep it up. And if over time there's new data and it's not relevant, there's a whole suite of tools out there for it.
Mm.
That's as deep as I'm going to go on SageMaker. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask. But there's a lot of services, and there's like 4 main areas to help you with that pipeline of take the data and being able to do prediction.
Got it.
Cool. Within SageMaker, though, this is not going to be part of the Cloud Practitioner thing. This is just to give you a feel for SageMaker slightly under the hood, so I can like lead into my next slide. The platform allows you to do anything from they've got pre-built algorithms, which do some pretty cool stuff, but then you can do completely custom stuff. So I think Varun gave a slide where you're saying it's the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and you're like going up the different tiers of like how much of it is handled for you. This is going down deeper of like, no, I want to handle it myself. So on the left is more AWS has handled a lot of the stuff for you. Here's the algorithm. You just chuck your data in. On the right-hand side is like, I want to really tune the car at this point. So you can get pretty detailed with what you do. But if you're going to do it, you're doing it with SageMaker and not the other high-level services. This is the one where you want to do really custom stuff. That's the thing I want you to take away from this. These high-level services, these built-in algorithms. Sorry, need to drink. Lots of talking, dry mouth. Just because we've got high-level services, they solve a problem. These are other algorithms, but they're not already deployed as a ready-to-go service. But you can say, I want to go to SageMaker. I want to deploy a model. I want one of these pre-built models. I'll tune it a bit. So there's a whole lot of stuff here that are, again, they are a solved problem. Let's take one, for example. Clustering. So when I was at that startup, a lot of my work with the data, I was working heavily with the marketing team. So one of the things that we would do is we take a whole lot of customer data and we just apply some clustering. And we don't know anything about the customers. We just say naturally form groups. And that's how we formed personas of what were the different sort of like the power users, the freeloaders, like we assign those labels because the symptoms of what we're grouped together just naturally formed. Like, okay, well, that's what's going on there. That's what's going on there. So for your own benefit, if you want to understand these a bit deeper, then you can understand what is a solved problem. what could I leverage for business value? Topic modeling. If you've got a block of text, what's the key thing that's being spoken out in here? So that's a lot of text summarization. Anomaly detection is handy when you're trying to look at things that are like fraudulent. So what is normal behavior? What is abnormal behavior? So you might want to look at that to start trying blocking abusive behavior on your platform. So that's the sort of area that you want to try and look at, and it's like, hey, reducing fraud and abuse of whatever service I'm offering as a business, that's saving me costs. That's a lot of value. So that's where it's like understanding how they solve those problems. Cool. That's all I've got for, actually, one more. Classification and regression. The classic example for that is churn. Taking your customer data, a whole heap of features about them, and say, what about a customer would predict them leaving our platform, that they're likely of churning? Could I do some early interventions? And I think Audible, from personal experience, kind of knows if I haven't been listening for a while, and they'll start ramping up the, hey, you haven't heard from you in a while. They think I'm about to churn. They start sending me some discount codes. I'm like, okay, I'll get back on the platform. Don't abuse.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. So that's linked into that.
Yeah. So we were seeing that with the invoicing, there was actually two dominant features, and it was kind of obvious. Like, it's the stickiness, the engagement on the platform. How recently have you been active or engaged? If that recency became further apart, it's like, well, hold on, that feature suddenly like weighted them pretty highly that they're likely to churn. So that's classification and regression, would be how you're trying to solve that business problem to reduce expense of people leaving your platform, loss of revenue. Cool. Now this is where I'm going to actually just steal Stefan Marek's content. So this is the slide deck.
Look at that smooth transition. You're allowed to steal if you can do transitions like that. Yeah.
I was going to just like copy paste across, but I'm like, well, hold on, it's got these watermarks all over it. And I'm like,
wait a minute.
Let's just give it credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
So, but also I'm doing this because it is specifically the syllabus, and it is the content that he's, the AWS has said that you're getting examined on, that you need to be aware that these services exist and what are like the inputs and outputs. You might be quizzed on that.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of best to see this syllabus in its natural habitat idea. Yeah, got you.
Otherwise, I'm just rehashing the same thing that he's already just like curated for me.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, recognition. So these are all as a service sort of things. You can log into the AWS account, go into each of these, and they've got a nice web interface where you can give it an image, and it'll detect within the image where is the face, and it'll give you the coordinates as to where is the face. It looks like text detection as well, which is interesting because there's another service that does text detection later. So some of them are starting to overlap with what they do. I think with this one, it's I think there is a service later, Textract, I'll get to it, where they leverage that for whenever you've uploaded like an image of your driver's license or passport, it's within that they go in and like extracting the details to verify, oh, what's my driver's license number, what's my passport number, and then like sending that off to like, are you a real person, sort of verification services. But this is mostly what's in a photo and understanding what's there. Recognition. Cool. Transcribe, as I mentioned, is just audio to text. I've already covered that. Poly, text to speech. Translate, if you're used Google Translate, you'd be aware of that this is a service. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. The large language models, all of that hype that's come out, you're not going to be assessed on this, but it's new, it's worth knowing. The language models that they use for Translate versus the ones that are coming out now for the large language models, I'm pretty sure that they're going to start like weaving these in under the hood, and they are way more sophisticated. Something that is not quite well understood, that with these models, that a word in like a vocabulary, it's not a word in isolation. A word has to be in context. So you might hear people talking about embeddings, and that's where it's like a word within like a bigger context of like, this word exists within a book, within a page and a paragraph. So that's all the context. So that's when they say like the difference between bank, as in like a financial institution, or a river bank. It's like, it's that context. So that's under the hood. These larger language models are just way more sophisticated and bigger embeddings. These services have like smaller, modest embeddings. These ones are like massive. And it's more of an infrastructure problem that they've solved to be able to do that, where it's a reasonable time frame where I can ask the question and get a reasonable response back. Before, that was a very hard problem. Now it's a solved problem. And we've got very sophisticated language models to be able to translate.
That's what I was going to ask. So the difference in those two systems and the as you're saying, the difference between something like this and a large language model, does it affect accuracy or the time of the response, or like where is the impact felt in the difference between the two?
Speed, because I think some of them, it's iterative. So if you've ever used the image generation, where it's like you give it some text and it generates an image. I've got a friend that was like, put in a heap of text and they generated a business logo for themselves. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, yep, cool, close enough. I'm happy with that. And it was a pretty cool logo. The sophistication of the language here, but the way the model does it, it goes, all right, I'm going to try it. And then again and again, and it refines it. So rather than these ones are pretty quick, it's like milliseconds, maybe a second or two. You want it with about 20 to 30 seconds per request.
Yeah.
And AWS is allowing you to throw as much infrastructure at it as you want. And they can get these down to, it'll be like a second.
Yeah.
To do that, but you're paying for the extra compute power. They've got
of that iterative
their own
process.
Custom hardware. They've got their own like silicon foundries to make custom hardware for these things. So they'll run like ultra fast, but it's like you get what you pay for as well. So if you can accept, oh, it's a bit of a slow response, but it's high quality, you're trading off time and money.
Yep, makes sense.
I do think these services will eventually just sort of like bring that in under the hood, and they'll just get better over time as well. Cool. Yeah, so Lex and Connect, these are not just taking transcription, like audio to text, it's trying to get meaning and understanding and within the words that are used. So I think there's some other services in the text area that are also used in Lex and Connect that get that language understanding. So if I say, Joshua went to New York, it would understand New York's the place, Joshua is a name, and it would understand that went to is the verb, that's the action that links the two. So that's the sort of thing that you can get out of these like Lex. You can get understanding and how words relate to each other. What's the action? And when I'm using like a chatbot or these sorts of things, that's, I want to cancel my account. So it knows the action is cancel. And it's like, all right, I might link you off to do that action. And it's like, all right, well, here's the thing that I need to help you as a task. So that's what they're trying to do under the hood. It can pull out what is the task. This very quickly goes off the deep end of like the cool stuff that you can do. Cool. Yeah. Comprehend is essentially what I've just said. You give it text and it does that understanding. And this is all under the hood. I think less users comprehend under the hood. Yeah, key phrases, understands topic, and what are the actions that are being used. Yeah, next. Yep, already talked about SageMaker. Forecast. So this is all time series stuff. So if you've got different sorts of activity, spending, that is time series. I used to work for a mining company where we would get, I think it's like every 5 data points per second for every mining machine. For each mining machine has like 200 sensors. And a given mine site might have like 300 pieces of equipment, and we're doing all of Australia. And it'd be like hundreds of mine sites. So we're getting like billions of data points per minute coming in. And we had all this time series data of like, what is happening? What is normal? So that's where we build a forecast of like, what is normal? How should this machine operate normally? And this is where the anomaly detection comes in, where if we've got a model where we forecast what is normal behavior and reality diverged from that normal behavior, we'd set off an alert saying, hey, look, we think this machine's not performant. There might be like an oil or a pressure leak. So that's where forecast can help you with these sorts of things where it's like, hey, is something suddenly underperforming? So any sort of time series forecasting services. Cool.
What does that point mean around 50% more accurate than looking at the data itself? What's that referring to?
I'm not entirely sure what's they mean by that because I haven't actually looked at Stefan's course, and I'm stealing his slides.
No, that's fine. I just wondered if you might have a view. Does it mean just then looking at the data in isolation without the forecasting model built around it, or?
I have no idea how they're qualifying that.
Yeah,
I know what models they're using under the hood.
Yeah.
ARIMA is one of the key models that they use, and I think it's might be they're saying that, this is my guess, they're saying that because these models can detect patterns that the human eye can't. Right. So things that are like weekly, monthly, and annual cycles, they can decompose that time series and go, here is the annual cycle. So we know that, I don't know, supply and demand. If you're modeling supply and demand, if I'm Airbnb and I'm got like, what is the amount of people that are offering houses that are available to rent versus the demand of people that are trying to buy it over time, seasonally, what's happening in like, if there is public holidays, if there's, you can feed in like weather, if it was rainy, so you can have like conditional time series sort of stuff. Hell, you could even put that into your forecast of if I'm doing like a DoorDash service, what is my forecast for tonight of like people that might be wanting to buy, and I know the weather forecast. I can layer that in for what my forecast for tonight is. So you can even do like pretty short range sort of forecasting and add that stuff in, and that extra context about, is it a public holiday? How did the human behavior vary given this extra piece of context? Because it really like people, like we have these cycles of what we do.
No one wants to go out in wet weather on a public holiday to pick up takeaway.
Weekly, monthly, or it's like,
yeah, got it.
So I think that might be what they're trying to get at there. These algorithms decompose those patterns a lot better than we can just by eyeballing it.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Kendra. So this is an interesting one because this has been around for a while and it uses like indexing all the text in all these services. So if I just throw all my documents into Google Drive, SharePoint, a whole bunch of Word docs, PowerPoint slides, and then I use the search functionality of like, I'm trying to find any documents on topic X. It's already indexed all the text and it does topic modeling on that. So it will try to find what is the relevant thing. What I find is really interesting is all these large language models that are coming out now. They do that indexing orders of magnitude better. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of those other services where they start bringing a lot of the benefits of large language models into this, and they get so good, it's a bit creepy. I was like, oh, it did that really well. It's borderline magic. What's also cool, again, this is a tangent, with those chatbot stuff, when you ask it a question, there is the language model that it's reflecting against, but there's a thing called RAG, Resource Augmented Generation. And it breaks down the question that you ask it, and it knows, okay, to answer that, I might need to go and query different APIs and go and search a database of indexed text. And that's how some of the queries for those chatbot things, it doesn't know anything beyond like the year 2021 because it didn't get trained on data after that. But this RAG lets it go and search a database of like what's current information and update its context. So it can stay up to date with domain knowledge. So you could index all of your, I don't know, if I'm a law firm and I've got a whole heap of like legal documents, I can index all that and it would be able to search through that as to what's relevant case history for what might be relevant.
Whoa.
That's pretty cool. So this is where Kendra is probably going to get a lot better on being able to do like document discovery of like what is related materials on the thing that I'm trying to search. So.
Yeah, wow. Ooh.
That's nice. This kind of underpins marketing and just being able to try to sell people more stuff. I mean, I worked in a marketing team, so I'm allowed to be a bit jaded about just more capitalism, selling more stuff for the sake of it. But this is better understanding customers and like how it integrates with different websites, SMS, and how to like target people, but also when to not target them. Are they possibly getting fatigued with being like over advertised? So you've got diminishing returns on the amount of impressions that you're trying to send someone. And it's trying to have, I think with personalized, you can have multiple levels of it. So what's the aggregated version of my entire customer base and having models per cluster of personas, and then having a model for each individual person that is a customer or a anonymous potential customer. And then you can ensemble each of those three layers to get like a weighted version of like roughly what would be a good targeting of what this customer might be on the verge of purchasing. So you can sort of piece it together that way. Personalize. Text track. So this is the one that I was talking about, where you can give it documents, images, PDFs, and it'll go through and just extract all that stuff out. There is a scenario where I had like a whole folder of PDFs of like bank transactions because that's the only way that I could get it. They didn't give me CSVs. So for a personal project, I chucked all the PDFs in, I grabbed text track and said, yep, get them all. And it ripped out all the text into CSV for me. I was able to put that all together and have a usable format to go and understand and profile all my bank transactions across multiple accounts. But I mean, in industry and enterprise, you can do like bigger, cooler stuff. I think in the insurance use case, being able to have, people upload these claims forms or photos of different invoices and receipts. So when you're trying to pull together a customer claim that happens, so there's the event where they may have gone to hospital, but then there's all the follow-up stuff, which is still related to the one claim that might happen over multiple days, and how to pull them all together. And then as the customer support agent, what was the claim number that's related to that case? It can search into those just like unstructured data of images and grab that stuff out. So that's Textract. And yeah, summary. And that's it. That's all I've got. So go back to
Awesome. That is a really good summary, I think, and very, I think it explained in a way that really makes it clear going through the curriculum of kind of what each piece is about, but then also how how they can kind of build upon one another to deliver, I guess, better outcomes each time.
Yeah. And that's where I like being in this area, but it's trying to relate it back to, it's not just shiny technology for the sake of it, it solves problems.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to convey. And the
Yeah.
key thing is there's SageMaker, general purpose, but then there's these high level services.
Yeah. Built underneath. If so, our participants are working through the cloud practitioner, like a lot of the AWS Skill Builder Cloud Practitioner curriculum, but then they also have access to the content on Udemy. Are they kind of the main areas that you would suggest they focus? Are there any other resources that you would suggest, especially getting into this kind of machine learning area? Anything else that might be interesting to build out their knowledge?
Well, as part of Deloitte internally, I helped facilitate a cohort where people were getting certified for the machine learning specialty exam.
Yep.
And the Udemy course, there is one by Stephen Marriott for the specialty.
Yep.
But his content is amazing. The skill builder stuff. Those two things right there, you've got visual impressions of someone explaining the same concept two different ways. I think having those two impressions are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you want to, the participants have access to an actual AWS sandbox console to go and play with it, get hands-on.
I think they do. Emily, are you able to confirm or deny that? I thought they did, but I might be totally wrong.
So on the AWS Learning Skill Builders site, they've got access to the practical, I think it's the Quest game.
Okay.
But I would say like a sandbox itself. But I guess that's pretty close to it.
The game is all you'll need for this level.
Yeah.
If you want to create your own AWS account, the free tier is usually pretty generous. But each of these things, if you want to have a play around with it, in the console, they've usually got a web interface on how do I just give it a bit of text, hit play and see what comes out. So you can play around and get some hands-on experience as like a little demo sort of stuff.
Cool.
Completely optional, not needed for the exam. Practice exams.
Yeah,
So with each of even the specialties that I've done, I think about 2 weeks of focused effort on just the video content and about 3 days on practice exams.
Okay.
And reviewing the responses of the practice exams and going back and reviewing the video content. So the practice exams, like the third touch point, reviewing the content after the practice exam, that's your fourth touch point before you're actually doing the actual exam. So that's the flow that I have trying to like prepare for it. But answering an exam question, an AWS exam question, it's an art unto itself on how to read it and understand how to eliminate two of the answers because they're going to be like obviously dumb.
Bogus,
but then there's two, they're going to look correct. They're both valid, but one is slightly better than the other. And that's where they're trying to differentiate. Do you know your stuff or not?
Yeah.
But yeah, the video content is sufficient. And the practice exams, you will probably fail them. I don't think I passed a practice exam before I did the actual exam. They're hard.
Cool. Okay, noted. Actually, for everyone watching back later, that is one thing I would say is Varun, who has run some of our other live learning sessions and is also a mentor in this program, is quite keen to run a preparing for your AWS Cloud Practitioner certification exam. And I think one of the topics that he is quite keen to cover is how to read the question and how to answer the question. So I think that will be really helpful prep.
Perfect.
Yeah, as people are coming up to their cloud practitioner exam. We do have a question in the chat. Cloud Quest and Sandbox, are they similar? How similar are they? And I guess in what ways are they different? Come off mute if you want to, Nirjana, and ask if I'm not expressing that correctly.
I think I understand the question. If I personally, I go and create an AWS account, that's full access.
Yeah.
It means I can accidentally spend an absurd amount of money. A sandbox environment would be sometimes these education platforms, they go, here's a sandbox. And they spin up an account for you like that. They give you the credentials to log in, but it's a quarantined version that you can do only the actions that you need to for that exercise. and after maybe like 2 hours, the account gets killed and cleans up
Okay.
everything. So there's nothing left over. So that's how those education platforms, they manage their costs, because they know
Yeah, of
you can only
course.
do this thing, you can only do it for 2 hours. So at most it's going to cost this.
Yeah. And then they're not hanging
That's
on
a
to it,
sandbox.
storing everything, blah, blah, blah. That makes sense.
I haven't actually done the Cloud Quest. I've just seen roughly what it is. I'm not sure if they give you a sandbox to do hands-on stuff. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good though. I think that's a good bit of guidance. Cool. All right. Well, that was a great session. Thank you, Josh. I'm going to pause the recording there for everyone at home.